Mexico has been in the news a lot lately in the last week as they elected their first female president, and many of you have slid into our DMs asking us, what's going on in Mexico? How do you feel about the new president? In this video, we're going to be answering that question and telling you what happened, not just from the perspective of a couple expats living here in Mexico, but also based on what Mexicans have been telling us every day for the last few days about the situation and what's going on here.
Welcome to Entrepreneur Expat. I'm Amanda and this is Justin. We're expats currently living in Mexico and we're also entrepreneurs. And on this channel, we talk about topics that interest expats and interest entrepreneurs like living overseas, global diversification, geo arbitrage, and more. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. And also, because this channel has been growing so much and we've gotten so many amazing comments here on YouTube, not so much on TikTok, but here on YouTube, we've gotten some great comments. We've put together some free gifts for you guys. So the first gift is our Living in Mexico guide. If you're interested in moving to Mexico, we put together a free guide to help you out, to kind of show you the basics. And then the second gift is our guide on our favorite business automations that we use in order to run an online business that we could run from anywhere in the world. So if you're interested in checking those out, you can find the links in the description below.
Okay, so let's get right into it. What the heck is going on in Mexico, and why is the entire world talking about it? So in case you missed it, Mexico elected their first female president, Claudia Sheinbaum, last week. She's part of the Morena party, which is the party currently in power. AMLO, who's the current president, is actually Sheinbaum's mentor. In addition, the Morena party now has a supermajority in the legislative branch of Mexico. Now, if you're living here in Mexico, it was pretty obvious that this would be the result of the election, and we'll get into why momentarily. If you're watching news outside of Mexico, though, it sounds like either the entire world is ending, cartels are running through the streets, or the Mexican election is a big win for communism. It really became obvious to us watching how other countries were reporting the news that depending on who was saying those pieces of news, they were obviously based on their own particular objectives and agendas and all of that, which is why we wanted to actually talk about what Mexicans themselves, who we've spoken to, thought about everything that was going on and get really the details from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, because we're foreigners living here, so we don't really have a dog in the fight because we can't vote in the election. And when I started watching a lot of the other news stations and segments, I was like, I think we need to make a video where, number one, we ask Mexicans what they feel about, because it's their country, how do they feel about these things, or maybe people who've been living in Mexico a long time because they understand the political system obviously a lot better than we do. So we wanted to do it justice. And then the other reason is because I saw all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, I even saw one news channel saying things like, oh, Sheinbaum's getting a slowing economy. And I was like, huh, where do they get that from? Because every economist ever is like, Mexico's economy is booming. So it's just really confusing out there in terms of what is actually going on. So let's start talking about the world's reactions and people's reactions. And we're gonna do our best to be as fair as possible. Full disclosure, we tend to be more, at least fiscally conservative, but we're gonna try and keep that out of this and just explain to you what Mexicans have been telling us. So basically, upon the news of Sheinbaum being elected, the Mexican peso took a hit, which we did another video on the Mexican peso and what it's been doing in the last few years and what the hit means for foreigners living in Mexico. But basically, conservatives around the world they're worried because Sheinbaum is part of the Morena party. The Morena party is seen as very leftist. They now have a supermajority. I think they also have won a lot of the mayorships as well in the country. So a lot of people are afraid that with the supermajority, they're going to go change the constitution, they're going to go change the system, they're going to start taxing everybody, which, you know, they may very well do with a supermajority. And, you know, if you're looking to maybe start a business in Mexico, like physically start a business here or make your money here, maybe it's not going to be so great for you. So I understand where that concern comes from. But if you're a foreigner and you make your money elsewhere,
like we do,
then it's not really affecting you, at least not yet. There's also more conservative Mexicans that we have spoken to, and they're concerned that their taxes are going to go way up to pay for more social programs, and the reality is that they probably will. Now, to be clear, and this is where a lot of the nuance comes in, that a lot of, mainstream media sound bites can't really pick this stuff up. An example of a social program change here in Mexico is the following. So under AMLO, who is the current president, and we'll get into how he even came into power because that's very interesting. He's also in the Morena party, and while he was in power, he extended I guess the best way to describe it would be like the Social Security benefits for the American audience that's listening. AMLO extended it to all Mexicans over the age of 70. Now, before, it was only for Mexicans who worked in the government.
Which does not really sound that extreme leftist.
Yeah, to an American,
compared to
that
what's
doesn't
going on in our
sound
country.
extreme leftist at all. So that's where a lot of the nuance comes in of, every country has its own thing going on. And when you live in other countries, man, you learn a lot about geopolitics and how other countries run things. And it really starts, your American mind, it starts to really like open up a lot, because I think as Americans, we're just like, yeah, everybody should just run things the way we do. And it's kind of like, well,
which doesn't always end up well.
That doesn't always end up well. Okay, so let's get into some of the other concerns, which are valid concerns. The other concern is, and I can vouch for this, being a Latina myself, my family actually fled communism from Cuba, so I understand this concern very well.
In spite of all the people in the comments that call you a communist.
In spite of all the people in the comments who call us communists and colonialists, and I don't know how you can be both at the same time and everything in between, my family actually fled communism. So I understand this concern that a lot of people have very well, which is that Latin American countries have a tendency of sabotaging when things start getting good. Things have started getting good in Mexico in the last few years. We'll go into some of that momentarily. And in Latin America, our preferred method of sabotage is voting in people who are leftists. It happened in Cuba, it happened in Argentina, it happened in Venezuela. People are now saying it's happening in Colombia. It's like Latin American countries finally start getting their stuff together, and then they decide to sabotage it all by voting in a leftist, and then it gets destroyed over the next few decades. So given the history of Latin America, then some people are concerned that that could happen in Mexico. And we actually had a conversation with an Argentine man who owns a business here in Mexico. There's lots of Argentines in Guadalajara who've been living here for a very long time. They came to Mexico because the situation in Argentina has been an economic shit show for decades, which is why Milei won the presidency there, but that's a topic for another time. And we were chatting with some Argentines, and they brought up a very interesting point. So AMLO, which is the guy who's there now that everybody thought was going to be like a crazy leftist communist, turned out not to be a crazy leftist communist. He actually turned out to be pretty good for the economy. In fact, the economy in Mexico is booming. However, as the Argentines were telling us, it's not the first leftists you need to worry about, it's the ones that come after. So that's just some food for thought there.
So now let's get into why the Morena party even won in spite of all of the concerns. And this is coming straight from what Mexicans tell us as we're living here and we're hearing these stories directly from them. So as Amanda mentioned, AMLO turned out not to be the crazy radical leftist that everyone thought he would be. And arguably Sheinbaum might be more leftist, but in terms of perceptions and things like that, you really want to look at like what the reality is versus what people might think. And AMLO was basically voted in because of everything that the old guard was doing. The pre-party, for example, and the PAN, which were really corrupt and inefficient, did things like the pre-buying private beaches for themselves with taxpayer money, and a lot of things like that you would just not seem like a very good idea, right? You don't want to be doing that with taxpayer money. And so AMLO actually did clean a lot of those things up. And Mexico has an economy that's now booming in big part thanks to a return of manufacturing to Mexico and a lot of nearshoring from the US and Canada. They are now surpassing China. They've just surpassed China to become the biggest exporter of goods to the US in 2023. And the administration is saying that they're not just going to rely on the US. This was both AMLO and Sheinbaum now coming into office. They're not just going to rely on the U.S. anymore. They're not just going to be in this monogamous relationship with America and only want to work with the U.S.
They're going to be economically polyamorous.
Exactly. That's one way of putting it. So, and the other thing is Mexico also stayed open during the pandemic. AMLO refused to destroy their economy, and a lot of money started pouring into Mexico because of this. And all of those things combined led to the Mexican peso performing very well overall in the last few years. And it was the best performing currency against the dollar in the last year. Mexico also has a very rapidly growing middle class and a lot of people that are coming out of poverty. Those are all really, really good signs for the economy. And so what really happened is because of the Morena party and AMLO being in office, for many Mexicans, life got better under that regime. And so it just makes sense. Being here on the inside, you see why they would want to vote in someone else from that same party, because they're under the assumption that things are going to continue to go well for them.
Now, of course, that remains to be seen, because as we have seen over and over again, if Mexico goes too far left, then that can lead to problems. Now, what is some of the stuff that Sheinbaum is actually talking about? Yes, there are things that to people who are more conservative sound alarming. I think one of the things that they're saying is prosperity should be shared, or la prosperidad compartida
todos,
es
something
para
like that.
todos,
The shared,
compartida.
yeah.
Which to anybody who's fled communism, like your alarm bells immediately start going off, because you're like, oh my God, well, ask how that went in Cuba or Argentina or the Soviet Union. Like, it's literally never worked. So yes, there are some things like that. Or, I think she really wants to push out social programs, things like that. But again, remember, like, to the American mindset, we've had social programs for a while. In Mexico, they have like practically zero social programs. So you have to understand, I think, where it is people are starting from too, which is part of that nuance. And they're vowing to keep cleaning up the corruption and all that stuff, because that's been a problem here. It seems like where in Argentina, a lot of the corruption and economic doom came from the left, and then that's how Milei got in there. In Mexico, it seems it was kind of like the opposite. Like, it was the right that was extremely corrupt. So then that's how we got here. Now, so there are some things that are kind of alarming. There are some things that if you're running a business in Mexico, you probably have your antennas up. She has talked about wealth tax, stuff like that. So, alarm bells going off for some people. And yet at the same time, and this is where to the American mind, you're just like, that's not that leftist. Sheinbaum is a fan of nearshoring, which is basically making Mexico rich right now. She has said she wants to keep trading with the U.S., but also keep opening up to other countries. I also recently heard her economic consultant talking about how they need to keep debt levels down, they need to not overspend, they need to keep managing the inflation and the rates and all that, which, compared to the insanity going on in the United States where we're from, that sounds pretty level-headed. And not that leftist, but that's our perspective coming from the U.S. where things are a little nuts right now. Now, however, like I said, if you want to start a business in Mexico, probably not a good idea. If you tend to be more on the conservative side of things, maybe it's going to be less profitable for you to have a business in Mexico. If you want to hire in Mexico, that may also not be a good idea. They might start changing labor laws, things like that. Taxes are definitely probably going up for Mexicans. And like I said, Sheinbaum has talked about a wealth tax.
Yeah, which I have my opinions on. I don't think that's something that overall is good for the economy, but people have their own opinions about that. We won't get too much into politics or that right now. We're just kind of giving you guys all the different perspectives and all the different angles about this. So what does all of that really mean if you're a resident like us living in Mexico, you're a foreigner living in Mexico, and you don't make your money in Mexico? So far, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot. In fact, our dollar just got a lot more powerful compared to the peso in the last week. And so it's actually good for us. We bought some pesos. We're going to buy probably in the next week another few $1,000s of pesos, because it's a good hedge. And we know that the peso is probably going to go back up compared to the dollar. So it's good to just get some of that money transferred now, because we're going to end up using it in the next few months anyway. So most of the concerns in terms of maybe they'll add Another requirement as far as how many days you need to stay in Mexico to keep your residency. That's something that we heard through the grapevine, which some people may not like because they want to move around freely. They want to be able to keep their, let's say, temporary residency like we currently have. So there's some talk of that. Maybe they'll add that you have to pay taxes in Mexico on foreign income if you're here more than a certain number of days. Other countries have definitely done that. Colombia did that, where if you were living there more than a certain number of days, you had to pay taxes on foreign income.
Yeah, a lot of other countries do that. In Mexico, most foreigners are not in the tax system per se, because it's different here. Yeah.
Yeah, but the likelihood, in all probability, of that happening, at least in the near term, is relatively low because they've got a lot of other problems to battle.
They've got a lot bigger problems.
Yeah, got bigger fish to fry. So maybe those things will happen, maybe not. We're not really super concerned. As far as the long-term play for Mexico, though, it does seem like their economy is heading in the right direction. We're planning on investing in stocks in Mexico. We're definitely going to invest in the peso. Whether we're going to start a business here or not, probably not. We already have our business set up in a way that isn't tied to any location, and we kind of like it that way. But long term, it's looking good for Mexico. It's heading in the right direction. Whether this person is president or somebody else is president, things are going in the right direction for Mexico. We're hoping that it stays that way. And Mexico's been doing better and better when, frankly, a lot of Western countries have been doing worse and worse. So we see that disparity between kind of the stagnation or decline of a lot of Western economies and the growth, relatively speaking, in places like Mexico. And the gap is starting to grow noticeable. And we think that in the next decade or so, you're going to see much more pronounced how those things are happening. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen with this administration. It's a lot of it is really just speculation. We're telling you what we think and what we've heard. But so far, Sheinbaum and her supermajority have not entered office yet. And they will also be up for re-election, and I believe it's 3 years. They can stay up to 6.
I keep hearing different things. So if there are any Mexicans who are watching this, can you please clarify for this for us? Because we've heard 2 different things. One thing I've heard is she's there for the next 6 years. But another thing I've heard is that every 3 years, Mexicans get to decide if the current party gets to stay there or not. We've heard both. So if we have any Mexicans in the comments who can clarify that for us, please do. It would be greatly appreciated. Either way, by that time, we might be in the next country already, because what a lot of people ask us, like, hey, are you going to stay in Mexico forever? We're like, we're in Mexico for now.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet, because we're interested in more of an international lifestyle. We're interested more in global citizenship. We're interested in international portfolios. We're interested in passport portfolios. And Mexico's just it for right now, because Mexico's like a soft landing for Americans. It's a good place to start. Does that mean we're going to be in Mexico forever? Probably not. And one of the reasons, we're starting to work in multiple currencies, or one of the reasons you'll want a residency, by the way, so you can open a Mexican bank account and you can start having multiple currencies. And I think it's called planting flags in different countries, like through bank accounts or investments or things like that. If so, that, let's say we're completely wrong about Mexico in a few years and we're like, oop, gotta get out of here, then, you have an option of somewhere else to go. But and
it's better to have that option before you really need it.
And it's better to have that option before you really need it. And like I said, we're just interested in more of a global lifestyle. So it's Mexico for now. Maybe we'll do another video on other countries that we're interested in. If you guys want to see that, let us know. Okay, so if you guys liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Really helps us with the algorithm there, so thank you. And also click the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. You can check out all the free resources below, including our Moving to Mexico guide. If you're interested in running an online business that you can run from anywhere in the world, like we're doing right now, then there's a guide to help you with that as well. And if you would like us to help you streamline your business through automations and technology, online marketing, and get into this whole digital marketing space and get your business up to speed with that so that you can be more location independent and move and live in other countries, the information on how to get started working with us will be below as well. Hope you guys found this really educational, and we will see you guys on the next one.
See you soon.